Hey guys, thank you so much for coming back. I'm glad to have you here. And we're doing black and white this week because this is going to be a dramatic chapter. This was the beginning of me really growing up because things really start to change in this chapter. So, and I'm actually going to read chapter 3 and 4 together in this one because it just kind of 4 is real short. So, um, excuse me if I get emotional while I read it. No, I probably won't on this. Too much time has passed. I don't think I'm there. But again, thank you everybody for coming back. And in case you haven't been here, my name is Jill. My book is available on Amazon by ebook or paperback, and the link is in the description. I'd love if you purchase my book, but if you'd just like to come along for story time, each time I upload a video, I'm going to do a chapter, this time 2 chapters at a time, so you can just put it on for story time. And I just did this channel just to be a part of the XJW community and be supportive, and also have more XJWs actually read my book. I think I said in the first video, I think more non-witnesses or never witnesses have read my book than ex-witnesses. So I really wanted to share it with those of us that have had the experience firsthand. So I really appreciate you checking this out, and share it with anybody that you think might appreciate it. And I'd love it if you subscribe as well. Okay, so Freewill by Jill McMillan, and we are in chapter 3. We were very involved with the people in our congregation. It really was more like a family. We all spent much time together in religious service, of course, but also in recreational fun. We took vacations with other families. We went to the Colorado River for boating, skiing, tanning, cliff diving. Weekends, we had barbecues, ball games, and lots of fun with our extended family. As we grew, each of us had a best buddy or two from the congregation that we liked to hang out with. Sandy and I liked to hang out with Cynthia and Sandra. They were sisters too. They were our ages. We never even noticed they were Black because our congregation and even our town seemed so integrated to our minds. There was literally no difference to us. We were still quite oblivious and ignorant to the prejudices that existed in the world. I have no doubt that the same was not true for Cynthia and Sandra. We loved going to their house to hang out. Their neighborhood and lifestyle intrigued and fascinated us as we got to know them well. The first time we spent the night at their house was like entering a different world. Their home was always cozy and dark, with the draperies drawn. It smelled like a bakery, like warm cinnamon and vanilla. In the girls' bedroom, on the dresser, was a delicate china saucer filled with brightly colored Lee press-on nails, which I had never even heard of yet. I felt a bit more worldly wise just hanging out with them. Their family was warm and welcoming, and we always had a great time laughing and playing with them. Mom and Dad had their good friends too. John and Marianne would come over several nights a week. They were a nice young couple. Both were friendly to us kids and fun to be around. But eventually we kids would just go do our own thing, riding bikes or playing ball or hide and seek. The grown-ups would play cards together. They would start making cocktails, the ones that were in vogue in the early 70s, screwdrivers or Harvey Wallbangers. Then they'd play hearts. It was such a festive atmosphere. When we'd run in the house to get a drink of water or use the restroom, we'd hear music playing and the adults talking loud and laughing louder. Their card games would very often go late into the night, and we could still hear the music and laughter as we drifted off to sleep. The 4 of them often went out to dinner or to the movies together. We had some nice older ladies from our congregation who would babysit us. Sometimes our grandma Hazel would come over to watch us. When I was 10 years old, one night, Grandma Hazel, my mom's mother, was over babysitting. We were usually asleep by the time Mom and Dad got home from a fun night out. But this night, I was up watching TV with Grandma. The Borrowers was on TV. It was a television movie based on a book that Mom had read to us. I had been anxiously waiting for it to come on TV for weeks. But when I heard the front door open, I ran to see who it was. Mom and Dad were home early. I excitedly said hi and asked, "Did you bring us anything?" They would always bring home a transparent orange plastic monkey that earlier in the evening had hung from the rim of a cocktail by its tail, or some such souvenir from their night out. But Mom walked right past me. She looked so pretty and was put together so smartly. She wore gray wool slacks and a delicate rust cable knit sweater and a series of fine gold chains, one just a bit longer than the next. As she brushed past me, she wiped her cheek with a crumpled tissue in her hand. With her head down, she walked directly to her room and shut the door. I looked puzzled at Daddy. He shrugged, made light of it, and asked what was on TV. Grandma left without talking to Mommy. She had never done that before. Dad thanked Grandma and walked her out to her car. A few days later, it was Saturday. Mom woke up my big sister Sandy and I. She brought us into the living room. She said she needed to talk to us. I didn't like how this felt. I sat on the couch right next to Sandy. We were directly across from Mom, who sat on the brick fireplace hearth. When I sat down, I saw Mom's eyes were bloodshot red. Her nose looked pink too. My stomach felt sick. I had never seen my mom cry. My mom slowly explained that Daddy was not going to be living with us for a while. I felt as though I'd been punched in the stomach. She said that Mary Ann and Dad had gotten too involved with each other. I didn't know what that meant, but my 10-year-old Pollyanna brain had a notion of what it may have meant. My sister and I cried. Mom said it would be okay, but I knew she didn't really mean that. The really weird part of that conversation was that Mom told us that Dad was going to be disfellowshipped. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses call it when someone is excommunicated from the church. Our dad was an important man in the Kingdom Hall, an elder, an outstanding speaker that everybody loved. This verdict meant that no one from the church would be allowed to speak to him anymore. This was going to change everything. Mom said that we, her and us kids, would still be going in preaching work that morning. She said we shouldn't worry because nobody would know yet. Okay, I'm going to say a very un-Jehovah's Witness thing now. Mindfuck. We had to go be with all these people that we were so close to, knowing that at the Sunday meeting the next day there would be a formal announcement from the podium of the church that our dad was disfellowshipped from the Christian congregation. Translation: he is bad, had done something bad, and was to be ignored from here on by all these church members. The next day at Sunday meeting was awful. At 10 years old, I can say it was the worst day of my life so far. The best way I can describe it, it was like being at a funeral, like someone had died. There was an audible gasp from the audience when the announcement was made from the podium. People started crying. Many people were hugging my mom and crying. I truly hated that day. I felt pain and I felt invisible. The repercussions of adults' behavior fell on the children too, but it was unrecognized. I had to figure this out. The adults were busy. Up until this day, our family had been center stage in the congregation, deeply entrenched and even looked up to by some as the perfect family. That changed overnight when our dad was ostracized. It made everybody really uncomfortable with us. They didn't know what to say or how to act with us. So they avoided the discomfort by avoiding us. Dad may have done the sinning, but we were all pariahs as it was too awkward for most in the congregation to be around us. Going to church meetings was no fun anymore. I felt disliked and unwanted there. Where I once felt the warmth of a spiritual family and the unity of my own family, I now felt like an outsider, a straggler on the outskirts. So that's the end of chapter 3. And this particular point was something I didn't recognize till I was out of the organization. How devastating it is when someone in your family is disfellowshipped when you're a little kid. You don't really understand it. Here's this person you look up to, that everybody kind of looks up to, but he's your dad. And now he's a bad guy. And that was hard to process and understand at 10 years old. But then insisting on going back to church after the fact, the congregation doesn't know how to, people feel uncomfortable and awkward when someone is disfellowshipped. They don't know what to say. If they do say something about it, it's usually something so awful and rude or inconsiderate, or they just ignore it. And so they would rather ignore your family, because when you're used to being like the center of all the action and all the activity, and all of a sudden it was like being invisible at the meetings. So we weren't disfellowshipped, but kind of felt like it a little bit. So chapter 4 kind of goes into a little bit more about how that felt. Growing up in a very unique religious experience like the one I did, you already knew what it was not to fit in. Jehovah's Witnesses are told not to be like the world, to stand out as different because of having clean morals, being honest, and keeping a modest appearance. We were supposed to be super duper Christians that people could recognize just by the way we looked. We also were different because we preached from door to door. Then there's the whole not celebrating anything. Birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, nothing. Celebrating holidays or birthdays would get you kicked out of the church. Suffice it to say, I already knew what it felt like not to fit in and be like everybody else. But now that unwelcome outsider feeling came from the place that I thought I did fit in, where I thought I had belonged. This was not something that was acknowledged by anyone. We kids did our best to navigate through this uncharted, rugged terrain on our own. Dad was gone, moving on with his new life. Mom was devastated. She was functioning as well as she could have under the circumstances, but nobody ever talked about the fact that our world had been blown to bits before our eyes, that everything we held dear, everything that made us feel safe and sound, had been shattered. To have your family suddenly ripped apart was brutal. Our world, our home, our family had been a magical, perfect unit in my mind and heart. A universe unto ourselves, so close, so tightly woven, so sure and constant. Like a warm, safe cocoon, growing a family of happy beings within. Precious beings that felt loved, that felt safe. We were thriving and growing and learning, always laughing and filled with joy. We never questioned that our world would last forever. It felt like it would. Suddenly, the cocoon was torn open, vulnerable to what was outside, floating and careening toward anything that felt safe. We thought it would be the church, the congregation, our extended family. But it was as if the church didn't recognize us now that our unit was ripped apart. So we knew not where to tread. We scrounged and scraped to find a secure grasp, something, anything to latch onto, to feel anchored, to feel safe. Life as we knew it was changed forever, like someone poured a toxic chemical over it that warped its color and shape. It looked different, sounded different, tasted and smelled different. It felt foreign and frightening. How I craved to go back. Oh, to feel safe and protected once again. Shortly after Dad moved out, he bought a motorcycle. On Saturdays, he would take just one of us for the day. We'd just go on a long ride on the bike. The arrangement didn't last long, but at least one Saturday is very clear in my head. Dad picked me up. We rode the motorcycle up to the local mountains. It was a beautiful ride. The sky was bluer than I'd ever seen. The air was crisp and the leaves were changing. The day looked like a picture on a box of a landscape jigsaw puzzle. We stopped for lunch at a cafe in the mountains, had burgers and fries, and then took a long ride back to town. Dad took me to Sears, where he let me buy a simply adorable white patent leather purse with a long adjustable handle. He gave me a handful of change to put in it. As I dropped the coins in, I could smell the new leather. I snapped the magnetic gold latch shut and slung it over my shoulder. I could hear the coins jingle inside the firm leather of the purse as I proudly walked wearing it across me like a Miss USA banner. These moments, having Dad all to myself, were precious, and I savored every one. A couple weeks later, Dad couldn't pick any of us kids up. He was busy that Saturday, but he stopped by and brought us each a gift. Each gift was huge. Mine came in a massive square box. It was wrapped plainly in brown paper. I tore it open to find a game called Toss Across. This was a game that was advertised during every episode of Gilligan's Island and the Flintstones. It was a game I knew I would never get. It was too expensive, a luxury for the elite and very rich in my mind. Oh my goodness, was I happy. I couldn't have been more excited. I squealed with joy, hugged Dad, and thanked him profusely. Later that afternoon, the house was quiet. Sandy and I were in our room. She seemed in a sour mood. What's wrong? I kept asking. Don't you love our gifts? You want to play toss across? Sandy snapped back at me. I don't want my gift. Why do you want to take that from him? Can't you see he's just trying to buy our love? I can honestly say I had no idea what she was talking about. I was no dummy, but I was a bit of a late bloomer, or slow to learn in some ways. Sandy, a year and a half older than me, was accelerated, always in gifted programs in school. I looked up to her, so when she said this, I felt as though I had had my hand slapped, like I'd done something very stupid. I went to the family room and played Toss Across very quietly by myself. So this is the beginning of the end. The third chapter was about my dad getting disfellowshipped for the first time. Yes, it happens again. and my parents splitting up, and they split up more than one time. So there was a lot of roller coaster going on. And just kind of how dramatically, when you're encased in this cult-like organization, well, okay, I call it a cult. I don't want to get in trouble for saying that, but I call it a cult. But when you're encased inside that from the day you're born, and that's kind of all you ever knew, and you're just wrapped around this group, these people that all think the same way, and then all of a sudden your family is bad and on the outskirts, to a little kid, you just don't know how to process that. And then you're supposed to go to school where you're not supposed to be like any of them either. So it really set the groundwork for a lot of confusion throughout my life. It also, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think confusion begins so much. We get so many mixed messages when we're little kids raised in this organization. And so I'm so happy you're coming on this journey with me, and I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe, please like, please comment below. I would love to hear anybody's feedback, or if they can relate to the kind of childhood that I started with. And I will see you soon with chapter 5. Thanks.